Hey everyone, welcome back to Dev Parkour. Sorry it's been a while since I posted a video. Life happens. But something came up today in a conversation with one of my coworkers that I thought would make for an interesting video. And it's actually a topic that I haven't talked about on this channel, I don't think. But the question was, which public cloud should I use? So there's a bunch. And specifically, I'm going to focus on, well, 2 or 3, but I'm going to mention 5, and the 5 big ones. And then I'm also going to mention, first off, that there are things that I wouldn't necessarily label public clouds, like DigitalOcean, Linode, both of which I use, both of which you can get discount codes for down in the video description. I really like them. They're great companies. Both of them started off that are basically virtual private servers. You could buy a VM in the cloud and run it, and that's why I started using Linode. I just needed a Linux VM in the cloud, and it was great. Over the course of the last several years, I've had as many as 4 or 5. Now I think I'm back down to 2 or 3. I also use, I think I've got 2 DigitalOcean droplets. Great service, right? And both of those companies and others like it have since expanded into like AWS-like things. So both of them have an S3 compatible storage. I think both of them have like a Kubernetes cluster that you can run. So great options, but I'm not going to talk about them in this video because they're not quite competitive to the same level that some of these other services are. So the ones that I'm going to focus on are AWS, of course, it's the big one, and then Azure and Google Cloud Platform, GCP, and then I'll also mention Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, I think is what it's called, OCI, and IBM. IBM has something, I forget what it's called, but obviously AWS is the big one. It's the one that everybody thinks of. I think it was the first on the market, and then Google Cloud Platform and Azure kind of in that next tier, and then Oracle and IBM's offerings are they don't have nearly as many services as the other 3, and they're really geared toward like serious enterprise customers, right? Think about who Oracle's typical customer is, IBM's typical customer. They're not really geared toward what we're thinking of when we're thinking of like just standing up an app, and that's kind of the perspective that I want to take in comparing these 3: AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. All 3 of them have a free tier. I forget exactly what Azure's is off the top of my head. AWS, obviously each service has its own free tier, and you can pretty much run an instance of something in each of the services to get you a taste of the trial, to get you a taste of the service. And the free tier is 12 months, and you get quite a bit. You can run, if you're building out an MVP, you could certainly run something in production. It might not scale well, it might not be production scale, production quality, certainly not what you'd want if you had hundreds or thousands of paying customers, but it's good for an MVP. It's what I tend to go to when I'm building out an MVP and I just need a couple machines, or maybe a machine and a load balancer to run something in and ideally not spend a whole lot of money on it, because it is free, right? And then eventually, if it takes off / when it takes off, I'll move it into better infrastructure and actually think about like production grade, production scale, that sort of thing. Google's free tier is a 90-day $300 credit, and basically that clock starts running when you sign up for Google Cloud Platform, and you have or there's a specific action you have to take. It's not just like logging into the console. You have to actually say, yes, I'm going to run some stuff in Google Cloud Platform. The clock starts ticking. You have 90 days. Do as much as you want. Use as much as you want. Use as little as you want. And $300 is the credit that you get. So once you spend those $300, you're done. Once those 90 days are up, you're done. There is some there's a specific action you have to take if you're using your stuff under the free tier. I forget if you can actually carry it over once you actually start paying for it, or if you have to set it all up again. I don't remember. I was trying something out in GCP and ultimately decided that I didn't want to go that route and went back to AWS. It's what I'm most comfortable with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that for everybody AWS is going to be better than Google Cloud. Now, aside from the free tier, what are some of the differences between the clouds? AWS, obviously the powerhouse. It has something like 250 different services, all very specialized. And there's a very clear hierarchy of like certain services are built on top of other services, certain services are ways of packaging other services or groups of services together in a way that is potentially more cost effective, but certainly more better suited for certain maintenance workloads, that sort of thing. Right, so obviously you could run a database on an EC2 instance, or you could just use RDS to run your database. It's a fully managed database. Or you could go with something like DynamoDB if you want the NoSQL approach, right? Lots of different options in AWS, especially when it comes to like pushing the boundaries of things. So their AI, their machine learning, their data science offerings are, as far as I can tell, the best of all of those three clouds. So highly recommend checking AWS out if that's what you're going for. Aside from that, if you need just kind of the generic services, even some of the services that are offered by something like DigitalOcean or a Linode, GCP is perfectly fine, right? Google is very highly integrated with Kubernetes, so if you're doing something Kubernetes oriented, GCP is a great option. GCP also has a lot of big data oriented services that AWS is not as. AWS people would probably disagree with me on this, but I would, if I were doing big data oriented stuff, I would go with GCP and not AWS. Now, Azure, also great in its own way. Azure's great if you're coming from the Microsoft background. I say that I'm a C# developer. I've done a lot of C# programming, and I use AWS. But Azure is great if you're a Microsoft shop, if you've been running a lot of Microsoft services, and you want to get into the cloud. It's really easy to stand up a Windows VM in Azure. Super simple, quick and easy, totally managed. And the Azure console has a really great UI. I would say out of all three, the Azure UI is far and away the best. Unfortunately, I do think it suffers from a little bit of a stability issue. In AWS, I run something, I know it's going to work, I know I'm always going to be able to access it, aside from the occasional outage that any one of these services can suffer. Azure, I just feel like it's not quite as polished. I did have one machine that I did make a configuration change, so I'm not super upset about it. But I had a machine in Azure that I think I changed the amount of RAM on it, and it like disappeared for a few hours. And it eventually came back, but that's the sort of thing that like it shouldn't happen. It's kind of frustrating when stuff like that happens. But Azure, definitely the best UI of the bunch. AWS, definitely the most rock solid infrastructure of the bunch, in my opinion. And Google, top notch when it comes to big data type stuff. Yeah, so hopefully this helped you. Leave a comment below if you have other reasons that you have gone with one cloud versus another, or if you think there's anything else worth mentioning. Yeah, I hope to get back into making videos more on the regular, but it all starts with you. So if you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell to be notified when new videos drop. And if you found this video helpful, definitely hit that thumbs up button and comment below. Ask additional questions. If you have other questions that I didn't talk about in the video, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. I try to respond to every comment or question, that warrants a response. Obviously, if it's a question, I try to answer it. And let me know if there's anything in particular that you'd want to see about any one of these public clouds. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.